Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, where we uncover the pivotal stories that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm Dusty Holcomb, and on this show, we don't just talk about leadership, we decode it. In every episode, we sit down with the change makers who've walked through the fire, challenged the status quo, and emerged with wisdom worth sharing. These aren't just lessons, they're lived experiences, real moments that reveal the mindset, resilience, and clarity behind creating lasting impact. Today, you're going to hear one of those stories. Scott Hogan's story starts with pain, chronic injuries, surgeries, and baseball career cut short. But instead of giving up, he's turned his obsession with recovery into Salt Wrap, a seven-figure company that's helped thousands rebuild strength and move without pain. He's the author of Built from Broken, a #1 bestseller on Amazon that's redefining how people train for real life, not just the highlight reel. From shoulder surgery to building a global brand to even a 6-month stint in Costa Rica, Scott's proof that resilience isn't just built in the gym, it's built in everyday life. Let's get into it. This is Leadership Unlocked. I am beyond excited to get to chat with you today and selfishly learn from you as I learn how to rebuild some brokenness myself. But thank you so much for investing time and energy into helping me, and helping our audience build back better and build something really, really special from a physical perspective, because everything we do in life flows out of our ability to take care of our mind and body. So thank you so much for investing time with us today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I have to ask, this is the first thing, and I've been dying to ask you this, and I haven't done it yet because I knew we were going to chat today. What's the meaning behind the name Salt Wrap?
Salt Wrap? Oh yeah. That's, whether it's good or bad, it makes people double take. They're like, hold on, what is that? As long as people don't assume it's those hokey, waist thinning wraps, that's not what it is. So the name Salt Wrap, it came from when I was a kid, very injury prone kid, not because I was a daredevil. My body broke down a lot, and that was probably the first seed planted toward our mission today. But as a kid, my mom would wrap sprained ankle, wrist, elbow, whatever, in these warm compresses. She would super saturate these rags or compresses with Epsom salt, which absorbs transdermally, very high in magnesium sulfate. So it has some anti-inflammatory effects, but it's also, very targeted and a natural based approach. So she wasn't rubbing lidocaine on me or asking me to take ibuprofen. So she found a very natural way to approach the injury or, the blunt force impact in a way that helped me get relief, but also is good for me long term. So for whatever reason, that connected way later in my life. And I'm like, man, I feel like we need somebody in the industry who is like the athletic trainer of the industry, where they're looking out for the longevity of our customers, the longevity of people, but also helping them get those short-term goals accomplished. And that just became a metaphor for Salt Wrap. And, my mom, she was way ahead of the game. She was feeding us bone broth popsicles when I was a little kid, and without making it a super neurotic focus, let's stay away from the red food dye. You get a little crazy. So I just grew up and all that stuff was natural. So that became a metaphor for a natural approach to getting relief and getting past the short-term sticking points without shooting yourself in the foot long-term, which a lot of, NSAIDs, cortisone injections, all the things that we've learned in the last 20 years are not good for longevity. So that's why it just kind of became a metaphor for the brand.
That's super cool. I love understanding the origin stories and how those things that, happen to us, happen for us earlier in life, we don't even realize, and they come back and really have meaning. And hearing you talk about that, I'm just further fascinated with understanding more of your journey and specifically the holistic approach, just that metaphor of let's use real things to help ourselves heal well, as opposed to medicating or damaging ourselves from a longevity perspective. I'm a huge fan of Peter Attia's The Drive podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I probably listened to it for 8 or 9 years. I think he's been on since 16 or 17, and I was a very early listener. And it's all that stuff where you just start thinking about, what do I need to do differently in order to live longer? Well, I have to ask, was that always your mission? Did you, when you were an injury prone kid, did you know you were going to be an entrepreneur and grow up and start a business focused on, wellness and healing and performance for athletes, et cetera? Was that always your focus?
It's a great question. I think looking back, there was a series of watershed moments, but I've heard Dan Sullivan say this, and if you take an entrepreneur back to their childhood, you can usually find a straight line to what they're doing now to something they were fascinated with. Like some of my favorite memories is I would make these, called them mystery drinks. It was a very big honor for me if I would be able to serve my mystery drinks during dinner. But I'd be mixing up all these juices and things and herbs into this disgusting concoction. And my mom would let me put it on the dinner table and people would pour it and pretend they liked it. So and she got me this beaker set. So I was a formulator from the time I was a little kid. That's not something I knew early. But yeah, I think there was, a series of moments throughout my childhood into collegiate baseball where I was injured constantly. That was a really formative experience because I joked that I was in the athletic training room more than I was on the field, but it's probably true. And I learned a lot just watching that world. I remember we had a trainer who went by Doc. I think a lot of trainers went by Doc. But I remember the football coach coming in and be screaming at each other, screaming match between the head trainer and the coach. The coach is yelling at Doc, "We got to get this guy back on the field." He's giving pressure to the training team, and Doc, "He's not ready, coach. We're not going to rush this." And the coach storms out, and then Doc turns around, starts yelling at the kid, "Hey, you need to start taking this seriously. You need to be in here every morning. No more partying." So I'd watch him toe that line, kind of prioritizing longevity and looking out for the kid, but also doing what's best for the team and for the short term. So I always thought that was really cool, a way to straddle that line. But I don't think it was until probably after I started selling supplements that I had a lot of clarity on what I wanted Salt Wrap to be. And we talked a little bit about my journey moving to Costa Rica during the pandemic, but that's what really crystallized it for me, just because we were living such a natural lifestyle, the pura vida. We were out hiking, we're outside doing all these different activities, and it just kind of came together of like, man, there's all these things that we're just built for biologically that I'm not doing, and I should know better. I'm supposed to be this fitness guy, and I'm sitting in front of a computer all day. So that's what crystallized tying in the long-term focus with the short-term, and then finding root cause ways to accomplish both. So yeah, it was like probably 3 or 4 big watershed moments, but looking back, I can definitely draw lines for sure.
It's amazing how we can connect those dots. And I love that premise from Dan Sullivan as well. And you can never see them clearly in the moment, but when you look back, you can see the thumbprints of God, or these little moments that have been directionally formative for us as we move forward. Well, I have to ask, when you look back then and now at your life, and you think about this through the lens of formative experiences that have created philosophies or leadership principles that you live by, what is one of those, and what's the story behind it?
That's a great question. And my mind immediately goes to the thing that caused me to start Salt Wrap. And it was a blessing, but it also led me down a road of kind of rejecting a core leadership principle for way too long. And I'll try to unpack that. Long story short, I was laid off from my job 3 days before my little boy was born. We had a C-section scheduled. I say we. My wife was having birth on a Thursday. The C-section was scheduled. I was laid off on a Monday before that, after putting in my leave request. So not great timing, to say the least. And I'm sure my wife will appreciate me telling the story, but she's been through a lot. She had a bad accident when she was 20. She's got an 8-inch rod in her spine, cross links, fusions from cervical to lumbar. You wouldn't know by looking at her. She's still doing yoga and Pilates and all this body work. She's tough as nails. But the fact is, getting pregnant is not easy on the back. I didn't realize as a young guy, the womb expands in all directions, 360 degrees. And when you have metal in your back, everything goes forward. So it was very rough on her. Basically ripped her abdominal wall in half. Diastasis rectus is what it was called. Very painful. And she was on true bed rest at that time. We've got a 2-year-old daughter at home. And I'm like, man, I'm laid off. There's no way I can go pound the pavement and find a job and then pour myself into it, like you do with a new job. I got to find a way to make this work from home. I've got to find a way to do this. And I'd come from some big, more bureaucratic companies. So I love the idea of doing everything myself. You can just move fast, just execute. No conversation, no meetings, just execution. So I took my severance package and I invested that in the first batch of inventory, which this is not business advice. I'm not suggesting that was a good idea. It turned out by the grace of God, but it was probably not smart, but it's what I did, and I was able to pay the bills. Things snowballed and we weren't raking it in at that time at all, but we were paying the bills, and I was able to scale up to past $1 million before I hired my first employee. And Forbes wrote this nice little article, a writer from Forbes. I think it was like how he turned a layoff into a one person, $1 million company. Really nice depiction of my story. And that became my identity. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the one person business guy. This is great. And it was wonderful, but it got to the point where at a certain level of scale, I can't respond to all these customer queries anymore. I can't advance our innovation as fast as I want. Can't do everything myself. And I held on to that for way too long. And I know every founder, every leader goes through this, like hoarding the big levers in your business before you start trusting people. But for me, it was very extreme. And the mistake I made is I thought it was a personal thing for me. I'm like, oh, this is something I'm going through. So I started talking with other business people and joining groups. And I realized, no, this is just a stage of growth, dummy. You know, I thought like, oh, maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe, it's like, no, this is what everybody goes through. So that like, when I finally realized that, and it was at the same time, we'd moved to Costa Rica, a lot of things crystallized for me. I'm like, I need a leadership team. I need to systemize this if I want it to have the mission and impact that I think it can, because me just pounding away at my keyboard 7 days a week is not scalable. And it's not even a safe long-term strategy. So
that's cool. And as you share that, that's one of the most common things I hear in talking to leaders, and then, experience myself as well. It's like this awareness that you're not the only one. Like you're not the first person to feel this thing. It's not that something's wrong with you. It's just normal part of growth. And I'm always amazed by it. Doesn't matter how much technical knowledge you have. It's the ability for someone else to help you see it through a reflection, through, community, through, networking with other people. Like it's the difference between reading a book and then understanding the wisdom of how that knowledge is applied. That is so powerful. And that's, I have a coach and I have people that, mentors that I lean on to help me see around those corners for that exact reason. And I'm delighted that you got that as well. What was the moment or the inspiration to move the family to Costa Rica? I mean, COVID's going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's one of the blessings of the type of business that you run, certainly, but what was the motivation behind that? What was the philosophy that you were really grabbing hold of?
Yeah, I can't take full credit for it. This is something my wife and I had on our bucket list. We traveled quite a bit before we had kids, and we always said, bucket list, we want to do some extended international travel before the kids are in school and sports and they've got their own opinions about things. When you got a 2 and 3 year old, you can just drag them along. And it didn't look like that was going to happen. Me being laid off, the pandemic hit. We're in Florida, things were relatively open, but still daycares are shut down, schools are shut down, masks on 1 and 2 year olds everywhere. It's just like, we wanted some space. And my wife, this is her dream. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you can find a place where we can rent for whatever, $700 a month, that's our budget. And you can find a school where I can get some work done. If we can make that work, I'll do it. And I really didn't think she could pull that off. About 2 weeks later, she came back and had a plan. Like, well, crap, I got to do this. I mean, it's something I wanted, but yeah, she was definitely the leader there. So we packed up like 8 suitcases and moved into a little apartment in Costa Rica. And just, we were not at some resort. We were living, we just immersed ourselves locally and go figure out how to read Spanish labels and cook at home and go to the beach for free entertainment. It wasn't a purposeful strategic move, but it ended up being super transformative. And that was a period where I just felt like I had a 1,000-piece puzzle floating in my head, and I talk about this in the book a little bit, but I had a lot of pains and issues that I was still trying to work out physically. I'd started writing the book, but there was pieces missing that I hadn't figured out. But yeah, being over there is just, it was really like an awakening for me. I think a lot of it was just the alignment of getting up early in the morning and the work I was doing, being out walking, being in nature. Where we were at, there's not much of a night life, so we're in bed early. So just a really aligned, from an evolutionary biology perspective, just a very aligned lifestyle. Stress levels dissipated, and I just felt so clear. And it's like everything, I just mapped everything out. And at that time, and I came back, I'm like, I'm going to write this book. This is what Salt Rap's going to be. I have to credit my wife. She was definitely the champion for that.
So not only the champion for the experience itself, but also really the genesis for what that experience created, that's the fascinating part. Like, there's so many things you've said that I'm sitting there going, man, I want to do that. That's so empowering. But what I'm pulling from this is it was because you created the opportunity for lower stress, for more focus, for a more natural, I don't know if it's a natural lifestyle, but just a more direct and aligned lifestyle. It actually created an unlocking of what you're really capable of or what you wanted to do, maybe more well said. That's really powerful. So she gets all the credit then.
Yeah, she does. And she continues to champion that because I love our work environment. We're a fully remote team. So we've traveled every year internationally pretty extensively. And it's always an adventure, but I think it actually helps the team. You know, some of our best months, I joke, were when I was gone and the team was fully empowered to just execute.
That's super cool. Now, how old are your kids today?
9 and 7.
9 and 7. And what are the experiences or the things that you're wanting them to take from and learn now by these choices that you're making that through the wisdom of being a parent, you'll know that they will carry forward with them from life for life.
Oh my gosh.
What do you think they're going to get?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I almost get emotional thinking about this, but our first trip especially, we've had some great trips, and went in some nice places and beautiful scenery and eating nice meals. But a lot of our trips, we're going to places where, they're underserved, underadvantaged, especially in South America. So I think that first and second trip that we spent down there, they got to see like true poverty. We didn't bring much with us, and our kids were playing with spatulas and dishes and things. That was their toys, and everybody was super happy. But we didn't talk about it specifically. But that's something my wife and I are aligned on, is allowing our kids to see, how lucky we are, seeing how other people live, seeing things from different perspectives. A lot of these like summer schools or that school we went to, there's kids from all over the world, every color, every background, all of these different languages, true melting pot experience. So I hope that that's what they take away, is like not a bubble mindset. There's a big world. There's a lot of different ways, to see it. And we're very lucky to be here.
Like I want my kids to see some of those same things, like the diversity of experience, so that where it's not about the cool toy or the technology, and it's about real life living. And you're going to have some really interesting conversations in 10, 20, 30 years with your kids when they tell you what it meant for them and the choices that they later make, just like you have with your mom. The salt wrap became this thing. All right, so you mentioned the book, and I want to go there because I'm really fascinated with the premise behind it. So if you could just share your story of writing this, and really it's not about the book, but it's about the reason you decided to write the book and the premise behind it. And I've got it on my desk behind me, and thanks to your tutelage, I know certain sections to go pay close attention to. But walk me through the story, if you would, that led to that, and then the problem you were solving when you wrote it.
Sure. Yeah, I joke that I've been writing this book my whole life, and I didn't want to write it. It just felt like at a certain point I'd started putting pieces together. And Tim Ferriss has this quote about when the pain of keeping the book in your head is greater than writing the book, then it's time to write the book. But the funny thing is you don't realize how painful it is to actually write it. But yeah, I'd been just trying to figure out my own problems. I was a certified personal trainer actually during college and after, and I should have known better. I felt like a fraud, because I wasn't able to even fix my own pain. And on the cover, those are my own scrawled actual injuries and surgeries and things that I'm like, look at this mess. That's a map of my body. I just had to, with a lot of humility, say, I don't know what I'm doing. I've been through this certification. I've been to these seminars. I've trained people, but I'm not able to get myself out of pain. Something's wrong. And so I pretty much scrapped everything that I thought I knew and just said, I'm going to go to the bottom of this. I'm going to figure out what are the fundamental issues that lead to, let's say, something like joint aging. I'm not saying we can stop joint aging, but what are the actual mechanisms of action that drive aging? What does that look like under a microscope? And then just systematically going to the bottom, asking a lot of questions. And, I interviewed people like Jill Cook, the world's probably most foremost expert on tendon pathology, and trying to put those pieces together. But yeah, I didn't want to write it, but I felt like this is the book I've been searching for, a roadmap that doesn't just look at exercise, but posture, nutrition, movement, quality, and variation, even some mindset stuff. And in a systematic way where you can open the book and say, here's where I'm at, and here's steps 1 through 10. And then also here's an index I can look back to. So yeah, it was really just to figure out my own stuff. But over time, I realized this is such a common thing. Like I'd go to the gym and I'd pay attention to what people talk about. And the running joke is like, oh, that's enough damage for one day. And my buddies would hobble out of the gym. And I'm thinking, you're 34 years old. You shouldn't accept that your body is just decrepit because you want to lift weights or you want to run. Like it shouldn't be like this.
Yeah, that mentality of no pain, no gain is certainly not what we should be ascribing to or holding up. It's almost like the entrepreneur's myth that if you're not grinding 100 hours a week and putting blood, sweat, and tears into something, you're not really an entrepreneur. You're not really all in. And so I'm intrigued by this. And you and I have talked about this a little bit, but I realized that I bought into a fallacy of pain avoidance as a good thing, and because it was preventing a surgery. And so I realized, or not realized, but I was told by doctors that, hey, if you keep running, and I loved to run, I was doing Ironman triathlons and all this stuff, you're going to have your knees replaced, and you're too young to do that. So you should just not run anymore. And I took that through this avoidance of this future thing that may or may not happen. And I realized that I actually lost part of my identity, and I lost something that gave me great joy and nourishment and replenishment of spirit, because to go out for a run was just this cathartic experience. And so as I think about it and trying to do it smartly without pain, it's been fascinating to look into sections of your book and go, okay, here's some things I can do that are very intentional that will help me be much wiser about how I treat my body. I don't need to go, run marathons or Ironmans or anything like that anymore, but I want to at least get out there. What I like about it the most is what you were just touching on, is there's a place to go to answer your questions. It's not like you certainly could pick it up and read it from cover to cover, but it's really more about helping you solve your problems and to rebuild the areas that are broken. When you say it was hard to write, it was a painful process, unpack that a little bit for me. We think about a book as being this epitome of your life's journey and fulfillment of purpose, and it should all be angels and singing and kumbaya, right? I mean, isn't it a mountain porch and a cup of coffee and the things just flow beautifully from your brain? Are you saying it's not that at all?
Yeah. The muse just shows up and it flows. Well, I actually love the writing process, and that's one of the things in life where I can literally lose time. Hours can go by and I'm confused when I come out of it. It's like I'm waking up. I think for me, there's a couple challenges. One is just the general imposter syndrome of like, who am I to write this book? There's these brilliant therapists out there, and what are my credentials? And I've said this before, but imposter syndrome's real. Feeling like you're not prepared or you're not good enough to do something, and it's probably good. Maybe you should have some pressure against you, but it's like, what's more important, your feelings or your purpose? And if you've got a clear purpose, like you gotta sometimes you gotta make the feeling subservient to that purpose. But for me, a lot of it was, is this a good decision to do right now? Because I just started the business and it's pretty touch and go. And so it was always in the back of my head, shouldn't I be building systems and hiring people? And I'm like, no, I'm going to write this book. So I took a gamble. I spent basically 2 years writing the book. I'd spend an hour a day answering customer questions and checking on ads or something, and then to the book for 4 hours. So in the middle of the book, I went through all the pain of, trying to sort out ideas and not knowing if I'm on the right path and, kind of learning as I go. But there was also this feeling like, is this the right move right now? But I kept coming back to this idea of, like Gary Keller talks about this in The One Thing. What's the one thing I could do such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary? And the story that I told myself that I tried to believe is, if I do this and it works, it's something that will allow me to have greater impact, and something where I can lean into my unique ability to share this message rather than just pounding away at the typical e-commerce model. So yeah, I wrote that gambling, but also thinking, if this works, this is something that can be a fuel, an engine for my business. But more than that, it was like, I just got to get this out there. But yeah, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. It was everything a book is supposed to be. It was painful, a lot of self-reflection and long walks. And I mean, I loved it looking back, but yeah, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for sure.
So when you discovered and really started thinking about your unique ability and that thing that you do, which is different, it doesn't matter, like all these other experts have their credentials, but they're their credentials, based on their learnings and experiences, and it's their platform. So I love that you embrace it and said, wait a minute, I have mine, and that means I have a unique and different platform and an ability to serve in my way. As you think about this, and I think this is really fascinating for our audience, and then I want to get into maybe some advice for the audience as they go and learn how to apply these principles that you've identified. But as you think about this for your unique ability, what is that, and what was your process of distilling and discovering what that was so that you could fully lean into it?
It's a great question. The best way I can answer that is I followed my curiosity. And I'd been exposed to this, I think it was Jim Collins's idea of a hedgehog concept. Like what are you passionate about? What can you also be the best in the world at? And what could drive the economic engine of your business? And the intersection of that Venn diagram is something that you're uniquely suited for. I knew I was pulled in this direction. That was step one. And step two was like, okay, how can I make this fit with my goals, or at least what's sane for me to do right now? And that was what I came up with, is man, this could be an integral part of a business model. It's a way to introduce myself to people. They read the book. They know that I'm not just some guy making up stuff. I really believe in what I'm saying, and there's a ton of science behind it. If I write something else, or we have a product for sale, they're going to be more likely to trust me. That was what my gut said. But yeah, I think the first step was just following that curiosity, and it was pulling on me. So I kind of pulled back on that thread.
I love that. And I'm a huge fan of that hedgehog principle and applying it to not just the business and the context it was originally, contemplated and relayed, but in the lens of the value that you can create as a human being during our fleeting period in time here, and the opportunity we have to create an impact and be an influence for others. All right. So if someone they're listening to this and they're going, okay, well, what does this mean for me as an athlete, or someone who is, dealing with, trying to make sure that I'm optimizing for longevity? What are the principles of thinking that you would say and recommend to someone that they need to really pay attention to in order to have that healthy, longevity-based lifestyle? And why is that important? Why is it important for someone to be thinking about those things in that way?
In the book, I highlighted 5 categories to tackle that I identified as big levers. If we can figure this out, we can really move mountains in terms of our levels of pain and our function. These are not separate, really. They're not siloed. There's a lot of connectivity and integration with these. But I looked at posture, movement quality and variation, muscle imbalances, tendinopathy, which is general breakdown of the tendon base. And then the 5th bucket would just be anything related to collagen erosion over time, whether it's from aging or arthritis. So those are the 5 things I identified of, here are the fundamental problems. And if I get to the bottom of these and then put together a system, I think we can really move mountains here. So in terms of how to approach that, or why that's important, I think the first thing I wanted to convince people of, or sell people on, whether they've bought my book or they're familiar with Salt Wrap, my sports nutrition brand, is you shouldn't accept this as part of aging. We're not meant to just break down like this. Aging is real. I'm not saying it's not a real thing, but we've become too accepting of this idea of that's just how it is. And especially with fitness enthusiasts, no pain, no gain, like you said, which is true, but not the kind of pain they might be thinking of. If it's a tendon pain, that's something you need to address. But in terms of why is this important, or what do we do with this? One of my big focuses in the book is corrective exercise, or finding your weak points and the kind of constraints in your chain and addressing those. And just like in business, there's usually one thing that's the constraint that's holding you back. I'm more of a desk jockey right now than I've ever been. I'm on the computer a lot, writing, working on Salt Wrap, which is amazing. I'm not living as dynamically as I used to. So maybe I can get away with, I go to the gym and I do my upper body exercises, and I've got a bad hip and I'm working around it. I don't right now, but if I did, I could work around it. I'd go sit on machines. I can get around that and not really address that constraint in my system. I can kind of work around it. But just like in business, once you get exposed and you're pressure tested, that constraint is going to show up like that. It's you can go to the gym and you can do these things and you can find ways to work around all these pain points, maybe. But what happens when your neighbor asks you to move a couch, and you've been avoiding the fact that your low back is just flared up? What happens when you're helping your wife unload groceries and a wine bottle rolls out, you twist to grab it. Like life will expose you just like that. And I'm always looking for direct lines across categories, but it's the same in business. You know, we've had periods where things have been good and you can get a little fat on the P&L and it's like, okay, things are good. As soon as you have a hardship or a catastrophe hits, that constraint or that extra weight, it shows up right away, whether it's a people problem or a systems problem. I guess coming back to your question, I think people assume that this style of addressing, like I have these pains, I have these weak points, mobility restrictions, it's kind of a depressing or disheartening way to think about fitness. Like, man, I have to just work on all this stuff that's wrong with me. That doesn't sound fun. It sounds like physical therapy, sitting in the corner doing all this work. What actually happens though, is when you systematically identify all the issues you have and you're real with yourself, like I was on the cover of the book, and then you go through and say, okay, here's my 3 big problems. So I've got this knee problem, shoulder problem, back problem. Okay, I've identified them. Now let's go and start addressing that. What actually happens is when you unlock those issues, you start seeing not like incremental progress in your fitness, your performance, how you feel. You see dramatic leaps. And this is the coolest thing with athletes and more elite fitness enthusiasts. You know, when I'm able to unlock something like they have a bad back or their facet joint syndrome, maybe in their low back, their ligaments are just flared up and you get that under control. And now they can crawl into the squat bar confidently. Their nervous system knows it's safe and they can go to town. You know, they can squat as heavy as they want. So not everybody wants to squat 500 pounds, but I think my long-winded point is when you do identify those constraints and you start addressing them, you see these big jumps and that's fun. So it's actually a really enjoyable way to approach fitness to be like, man, where do I need to work on? You see these big jumps rather than just incremental progress of like, oh, I can bench a little more now, but you know, my lower body's still on fire. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Okay.
You know, the premise that I'm thinking about as you share that is I have a very wise mentor, former coach of mine who once shared with me, says, you know, Dusty, if you're not aware, your greatest strength will become, like it was not a might become, it was a will become your binding constraint. Because if you lean into all that one thing that got you where you are, that made you great, that makes you great. And the fallacy is that you think of that as that strength as your unique ability. And so then you just lean in on that and you don't actually counterbalance. And so it's that counterbalancing that allows you to actually flex past that plateau, that point of, okay, this is no longer the only thing I do. It's now a part of what I'm building. And I like this way you think about, I'm thinking about this now from a fitness perspective of how important it is to counterbalance and to address that thing that's going to hold you back. Like if you just do, you know, a certain type of movement all the time, your body's gonna get good at that movement, but your other areas that are definitely gonna be weaker. And I think that was a fallacy I bought into doing endurance sports and long distance stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I don't have time to go lift weights, or I don't have time to go do this other stuff. And realizing now that probably was exactly the things that I should have been doing, or the types of exercises that you've recommended to me that, like walking backwards, how is that actually helping me run forwards? But then when I understood the science and the counterbalancing effect that you were sharing with me, I went, oh, well, I wish I'd have figured this out 15, 20 years ago. Like it's a compound effect. And I think that's the other thing that comes to mind. Like you mentioned a second ago, hey, you get this, suddenly you get these great unlocks, you go further, you go faster. But it's the compound effect, right? It's these little things that build and build and build. Let me ask you something. Are you leading off of instinct? I mean, you've got the vision, you've built the thing, but most leaders I talk to are still flying without a system. Vision to Victory, the mastermind, changes that. It's a 12-week experience where we install the leadership operating system you've always needed: purpose, strategy, cadence, metrics, execution. This isn't a course. It's not more content. It's a small group of leaders who are done chasing clarity and ready to lead with it. You'll walk out with a full leadership operating system, a trusted circle of peers, and a repeatable way to scale without losing yourself along the way. There are only 12 seats in this group, and most are already spoken for. It's an application-only process. Go to arcusgroup.com/mastermind to apply. So if someone's listening and they're going, okay, well, how do I make this applicable to me today? Like, what are 3 things that someone should be doing or thinking about doing and in putting into their fitness regime, whether they're an athlete or whether they're just trying to stay healthy for their family, for their friends, for their work? What are 3 things that people should be doing or should be integrating into how they approach taking care of their body to optimize for longevity?
The first thing that comes to mind is posture. And I don't think this gets enough attention. A lot of people, their idea that the healthiest day is 9-10 hours in front of the computer. And if they're dedicated an hour at the gym, and then seated in their car and then seated at the dinner table, if you think about it from that perspective, what we're doing through exercise is maybe 5% of our day, probably less. Posture is in control 95% of the time. So if we're not aware of that and we're not correcting that, we don't have some guidelines to remind us what good posture is, then it doesn't matter how much you exercise, you're probably going to be reinforcing bad posture. It goes the other way too. A lot of this stuff, these movements can help reinforce good posture. I'm naturally kind of kyphotic where my upper spine likes to curve forward, my shoulders like to come forward. Right now, I'm a little more hunched than I would be. I'm kind of over the microphone. So this is not something I probably should do for 10 hours a day. But, being aware of posture, and I'd say a good actionable thing there, which there's a diagram in the book, is your monitor and desk setup. You think about how much time we spend there. Almost all the overuse injuries I see, I could track back to a computer injury. So, if you got neck, wrist, elbow, all these things, low back. But a couple easy things is raise your monitor so that the middle of the monitor is at eye height. And again, I'm calling myself out. I've lowered my monitor just so I'm in frame, but typically my monitor would be higher, and that forces you to sit back here. And now your neck is, you're tucked a little bit and you're more in alignment with your spine. If you're in a laptop, you have no chance. You're down here, you're pulling on your neck, your shoulders are coming forward. So getting your monitor in a good spot. If you've had extremity issues like wrist and elbow, look at your keyboard setup, get your chair height so that your elbows are around 90 degrees. A lot of people they're leaned in where they've got this kind of angle and you're just contracting all these muscles all day. So those are just a couple of examples, but it just shows you what posture and ergonomics do. And again, I don't think this gets enough attention. The other thing, which again, for our business people who are dedicated, they've maybe said, this is not a season of my life when I'm going to spend 2 hours working out. There's seasons of my life where I'm like, what? I had 5 minutes to stretch and a 10-minute walk. That's a win for today.
Yes.
But something you can do is just break up those sedentary periods with some kind of movement. If for nothing else, it's going to grease your joints. You're going to get that synovial fluid flow. You're going to feel better. So I say first thing in the morning, if you can, do some type of movement, whether it's a walk, if it's not an exercise session, maybe it's a quick mobility routine. I have a 5-minute mobility routine I recommend from the book. Just some type of movement so that you're not going from dinner time to the bed, to your chair, to the car. You can put together a solid 18-hour stretch where you've not put your arm over your head. You've not really twisted into this transverse plane. So I think just more frequent movement and getting movement in the morning is really transformative and underleveraged. And the third thing I would say is walking. I have a whole section in the book. If you put all the list of benefits of walking into a list and somebody did a pharmaceutical commercial, it would be unbelievable. No, there's nothing that does this. There's nothing that relieves anxiety and depression, improves focus and creative thinking and lymphatic drainage and there's nothing that does all that. Just walking. And I know you're a runner as well, Dusty, but I found a lot of my best thinking happens when I'm walking. You have that incubation period and then there's that revelation. So that's something I think for the mental focus benefits, and then just the general keeping stress down and getting movement, just making a walking habit. If you can get 20 minutes in a day of a casual walk, man, I would rather people do that than any exercise program.
I love that. And what I'm hearing as you explain all 3 of these things, it doesn't matter age or stage or condition. These are all things that are eminently within our circle of control. We have the locus of control to do these things. When you were talking about posture, I felt myself sitting up, rolling my shoulders back, and we can choose to do these things. And it's that power of choice that enables us to create a different outcome than the one that we feel is, put forth upon us. And so I love that. And it's funny, I've had this mental I had to get used to this mental idea that it wasn't a good workout unless I really went out and crushed it. Like for, six, I used to say, hey, if it's not a 10-mile run, I'm not going to bother. Yeah. It's just not worth it. And I realized what a fallacy of thinking that was when I watched something or heard somebody talking about, hey, they had this revelation that they were of the mindset if they couldn't go to the gym and crush it for 2 straight hours, it wasn't worth it. And they wouldn't go. And then so those days that they couldn't do it, they'd skip. And then they realized, no, I'm setting the bar. The standard is now the ideal, as opposed to, well, what is my no negotiable or no excuse minimum that I must have? And he said, for me, it was 200 push-ups. Like I could do over the course of a day, 200 push-ups that was my, no matter what. And so as I think about this, and as I'm going to go to your book and pull some things, what's my 5-minute longevity routine I can do in the morning? And I love that because I do some stuff now, but I don't think I'm doing enough total movement, especially over the shoulders as I recover from some shoulder surgery. And so I love this. This is so practical and it's so within the circle of control. I'm going to shift us a little bit because I want to come back to the book because you're doing some really cool work there. But I want to go to mentors for a moment. And I would love to I'm just going to ask you, who is a mentor that has had an outsized influence on your life and the decisions you've made? And what were some of the things, or what was one thing that they gifted you with from a perspective or a philosophy, approach, mindset, et cetera, that you just look back on now and you go, I have been shifted because someone else gave me this gift of a different perspective?
I'm thinking about the most powerful shift I've had in probably the last 10 years, or like a true watershed moment in terms of how I think about business in my life. This is a concept I got from Garrett White from Wake Up Warrior, but he has this idea of you've got these 4 buckets or 4 categories of life. You've got your physical health, your body, you've got your mental and spiritual health, your relationships, and then your business or your work. And that's not a new idea. Some people break it into 5 things or 3. But what stuck out was his challenge that your success or your ability to show up powerfully in your life collapses down to the lowest common denominator of those 4 things. And I realized so many of my head problems, my business problems were not business problems. They were relationship problems. They were physical problems. And like an extreme example would be if I get in an argument with my wife. And, we're very open. We like to kill the monsters when they're small. We have heated discussions and then we come back together quickly. I think that's our best strength. But let's say that happens and then we don't have the chance to reconcile. And then I've got our quarterly team meeting. Like I don't have a chance of showing up powerfully, of being present and engaged, So that was a moment of like, wow, I am trying to optimize something because it's focal, but that's not really the core issue. And I guess further down that path as a young guy that just started Salt Wrap and I'm paying the bills. We've got 2 little kids and I'm thinking, man, I'm doing great. Like I'm working my butt off. And my wife sat me down and she was like, I feel like the business is first, the kids are second, and I'm a distant third. And I was just like blown away. I'm like, I thought I was doing great. And then I had to look really hard. Like, yeah, when's the last time we went on a date? Am I looking at my phone when she's talking to me? And those are things I still work through. But I think that's a really powerful example. But that probably the even more common thing is the idea that your nervous system is the foundation of your business. And it's very true with me. I've got a sensitive nervous system. I don't know if we have time for this, but I think this is like an infomercial explanation of how this works. And then I'll tie it back to reality. This happened not too long ago. It's so stupid, but I got to tell this story. I was at a Sprouts health food store and you know what mocktails are?
Oh yeah.
So I saw this drink and it was something on sale and I looked at the ingredients and it was like lemon balm, passion flower, L-theanine, like great, like relaxing ingredients. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I can drink this in the evening. I'll feel relaxed. And these are great sleep ingredients. I'm like, okay, I'll try this. It's on sale. So I grabbed it and then I grabbed the flavor next to it, like strawberry lemon, took them home. I think it was a Saturday and had one of those at like 7 p.m. It was good. And I laid down in bed for the night, started reading. And all of a sudden it's like 11 o'clock and I'm still awake. And I'm like, what's going on here? And it gets closer to midnight and I'm reading a Jack Reacher novel. And the character in the book is like this, he's this wealthy businessman and he's got this mansion and private jets, and his business runs into some hurdles, and his personal life becomes an anchor just dragging down the business. And my heart's beating fast. And I'm like, this is what's happened with me. You know, we're doing okay, but man, we've got all these subscriptions we don't need. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go audit QuickBooks right now. This is midnight on a Saturday and I should know better. And I've been through this before. I have enough awareness to be like, hold on, this feels like something's happening biochemically with me. So I get out of bed, I go to the garage, look at the drink I bought and make sure it's just relaxing ingredients. And then I look at the other drink, and sure enough, it contained like guayasa with like 100 milligrams of naturally occurring caffeine. And so I drank that right before bed, and now I caused my adrenaline to dump. My heart rate went up. I'm someone who has been through this, and I know what's happening biochemically, but it still hijacked my mind, because your brain doesn't go, cortisol seems to be spiking. My adrenaline's up. You know, you don't have a dashboard. Your brain is a heat-seeking mechanism. It's going to go, what's happening right now? It happened to be the thing I was reading that triggered me. But if I was in a team meeting, I would have said, oh, this is chaos. You guys need to get it together. If I was talking with my wife, I might have blamed her for my problems. So that's an extreme example, but I was able to be like, okay, my world's not collapsing. I just drank caffeine before bed like an idiot. So most people are hopefully not that silly, but what does happen is the average entrepreneur is on their computer or their phone 10 plus hours a day, and blue light's just piping into their brain bucket and stressing them out. They're not moving enough. So they get this low grade, a little bit elevated adrenaline, and it's a body problem, but we're trying to solve it in our head, and that's like I said, that's the 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you're missing the corner, but you can't solve it up there. So that's what I've learned about myself, is stop trying to solve these head problems if it's a body problem. But in business, I found if I can get my nervous system under control, I'm taking care of my body, I'm putting deposits in, I'm exercising, eating right, I'm able to make better decisions, show up more powerfully, more creative. Whereas if I'm not aware of that, it's like you're just spiraling up here. So that for me, that's my North Star.
I love that. And I don't think it's a silly story at all. I love that you have the self-awareness to recognize, catch it in the moment, right? Before it torpedoed you completely. But I don't believe in the premise of work-life balance. And the reason I don't is because it's only well, there's many reasons, but there's not two planes, right? It's not like we can just navigate, but it's balancing. And the way I love what you pulled out here is like, and I also believe in 4 core life domains that you really must invest in. It's work, life, or maybe it's domain optimizing. And so recognizing that where we invest energy into those different domains is actually optimizing our ability at the same time to show up fully in the other domains that matter. And like, frankly, that's something I'm still working on. I'm still learning. I think all people I don't know that many people are sitting on the mountain saying namaste and they have it all figured out. But like that's a real challenge. And what you just pointed out though, is like understanding of these things that are happening physiologically or psychologically or relationally have such a carryover effect to those other domains. And if you want to optimize how you show up and how you perform, you've got to pay attention in all the areas that really matter. And it's not just your body. It's not just work. It's not just your relationship. It's all these things as a system, which brings me back to your book, because I'm really fascinated with this, Scott. You're getting ready, you're re-releasing the book, you're updating it, and it's coming out as this goes to publication. It'll be right around the same time. It's not like the book is 20 years old and you're writing a 20-year, refresh on it. What is the thing you're optimizing for with the re-release, or probably better said, an update, like a repurposing, re-updating of the book? And what's the goal? What's the purpose behind it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I self-published the original version 2021, so we're coming up on not even 5 years. I had already been working on a revision when the publisher reached out to me, and I can tell that quick story. But what I realized is, I think the reason the book had success, maybe more relative than other ones like it in that category, was that there was this core group of initial readers that, like, I'll call them the health enthusiasts. They're the people that they're well-read, they're smart. And I love that. Like, our readers will challenge us. They're not a novice in any means in terms of fitness, nutrition, health in general. So there's people that I think, just from reading initial reviews, that they've been through the washing machine of conventional medicine, conventional fitness, and they're not happy with where they're at. Like, yeah, I've made some progress. I go to the gym every day, or I do this, and I'm eating right, but I'm still in pain. I'm still having this problem. And so they were willing to pour through a 300-page book to try to figure out what's going on. And I think those core group of people were very influential. You know, a lot of health enthusiasts and people in the medical field, military, physical therapists even in that field. So I got the feeling those people are what helped it kind of spill over into more general population readers, which is where we're at now. You know, most of the new people finding us are not super fitness junkies. They might not have touched a weight their whole life, or maybe they're not even aware of the therapeutic sports nutrition things they can do. And so they're coming into this and they're for the first time saying, oh, wow, resistance training, you know, it's actually really good for reducing all-cause mortality. Now, that's interesting. Or helps with cognitive health. So I'm kind of selling people on this way of life who've never done it before, which is really cool. But I also realized there was an opportunity to create a more direct on-ramp for those people rather than jumping right in and doing like a 4-day workout split, you know, giving them workout from home options. Or what if you're traveling? Or what if you don't have the equipment? And just making it more, giving them a direct path to getting into the program if they're not well versed in this stuff. So it was great timing that actually James Clear tweeted me or on X and said, hey, I love your book. I'd like to chat. He's one of the founding authors of Authors Equity. And they liked that idea. Like, yeah, this would be a great update and we'd like to republish it, you know, and they've helped me professionalize the book, cleaned up writing, better formatting, better descriptions of things, you know, a lot of the things people have been requesting. So yeah, I wanted to professionalize the book, and this is a big opportunity to get to a wider market. But yeah, the main point of rewriting it is just giving the average person, frankly, a better on-ramp to getting into the program and getting results from it.
I love that. And that's the best. I don't even call it a humble brag because it wasn't that at all. But like when James Clear is reading your stuff and going, this is quality, this matters, and this is impactful.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's such, I'm a huge James Clear fan because it's so usable, right? The way he writes, the things he's shared with Atomic Habits and others is you can,
brilliant guy.
It's applicable. And I think that, you know, what you're doing too, and the way you just described this is making really in-depth, rigorous, scientifically grounded insights and information applicable to a person so they can not be satisfied or not subject to pain. They can actually take control of that. And I'm just so glad that you're doing that. And I can't wait to get, you know, I've got the current copy, of course, but I can't wait to get the new one and really treat this as a primer for how I re-optimize for my next chapters and seasons of life. Okay, I'm going to do one last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. But we'll go to some rapid fire questions. I'm really curious about these things. What is one book, Scott, that you believe every leader should read?
First thing that came to mind was The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan. And I think probably every entrepreneur's experienced this, but you get to where you're just looking at that ideal and you forget to appreciate what you have. So that's been super powerful, looking back at wins, and that cascades to the team, you know, celebrating, you know, those little milestones.
I love that. It's one of my favorites as well. And I think it's one of my favorites because it's one I need to really mindfully articulate and into my lifestyle and my premises there. What is the single best leadership advice that you've ever been given? Like a nugget, a pearl of wisdom. What's the advice that you've been given that you go, man, that was the one?
Early on, one of my first jobs out of college was at Target. I was a executive team leader. I helped unload the truck basically in the morning. And we had a district team leader who came in and talked to us, new recruits, and he was just talking about all the leadership stuff we're going to get exposed to at Target. And they're great at educating, you know, your managers and leaders. But he said, just be a good boss. He's like, all this stuff is great, but he's like, if, you know, when things get hard, if you've taken care of your people and you're treating them like humans, you know, and you're not condescending to them, you're not cracking whips, like you're going to get better results because they genuinely care about you. It's like, that's how you're going to get people to perform. That's always stuck with me. I didn't know that man that well. That stuck with me for whatever reason. I think it's very true.
That's amazing. Yeah, I could not agree with you more. Like just be a good human. What's a daily practice or a routine that you follow that you know makes you a better leader? And I don't mean leader through the lens of business, but leadership through the way John Maxwell describes it. Leadership is influence. Like, what's a daily practice or routine that makes you a better person of influence?
I feel like this is a selfish answer, but it's the thing that I found is most consistently helpful is, for me, deep work in the morning. Something that I'm passionate about in my unique ability zone. So not fixing a website problem, but writing or building something, doing that first thing in the morning. Then I have my time with my family, get the kids ready for school. I talk to them on the way to school. I go to the gym. By this time, it's maybe 9:30. If I can do those three things, everything else is gravy. I can show up, I can be present, I can help people. But if I don't do those things, it's 50-50. So it goes back to that whole building your power base. That's my best honest answer.
I love it. And I don't think that's selfish at all. It's one of the things that I hear a lot. And I try to, if I could dispel anything, it would be that self-leadership isn't selfish. And the ability to lead yourself is what precedes your ability to lead teams, to lead organizations. But self-leadership isn't selfish. And I say that with such fervor because I know that I've had to remind myself of that almost constantly my entire career, because it's so easy to put everyone else first and think you're doing the right thing when you're actually sub-optimizing your ability to create influence. So I love that you've identified that for yourself, and I don't think it's selfish at all. All right. When you go home or when you shut it all down at the end of the day, what must have happened for you to say, today was a good day? Today was a great day. What is the thing that you use to measure success?
Right now, it's presence. Was I present with the people that I talked with, whether it's through a meeting, an email, even, at home with my family? Was I able to be present? That's the thing I found, that if I haven't done that, I don't feel good about the day. Doesn't matter how much I've gotten done. And, it's something I struggle with. That's maybe why it came to mind. But I know that if I was appropriate in the moment, I was present. I've done, what's the famous Thomas Carlyle line? Our main business is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but what to do what lies clearly at hand. That's when I feel good and I can close things down. Otherwise, I'll keep banging away at some task that might not even really matter. But that's the thing that makes me feel like, okay, I'm good. I can close this down and I've done my job for today.
And I like that you said it's something you even struggle with, right? And
yeah. I don't have it figured out, but it's something I try to keep in the front of my head.
What's a cause or passion that you are, or an organization that you're just supremely passionate about supporting?
I would say youth sports. And I didn't expect to go this route. After I was done playing baseball, it's like a bad breakup. My God, I stopped watching baseball and I kind of didn't think about it for years. But then, my kids got a little older. I started coaching them and I realized how influential you can be to these other kids. Because a lot of people sign up to coach to be around your kids. I want to coach my kids. And then you realize you're responsible for 17 other little kids. You can't just call in sick to that. So that's something that I got a tremendous amount of enjoyment from, probably more so even than when I played at a high level. Youth sports, just mentoring, helping them prevent the injuries I had as a kid, but also just teaching love for the sport and balance and, trying to be a positive force there. I think that's a huge opportunity and I really enjoy that.
Well, if our audience is interested, and I'm sure they will be, both in understanding how they can optimize their own lives, how they can build from broken, how they can ensure that they're, not feeling pain. What's the best way for them to learn more, to connect with you, to follow Salt Wrap? Where should they go and what should they do?
Probably the easiest thing is if you go to scotthogan.com, it'll just redirect into an about page on our website, and then you'll have access to the book and our mission at Salt Wrap. And I post on social media as well occasionally, but that's probably the best place.
Great. And we'll make sure we have a link in the show notes there. And if you would, just give us a little bit of the title of the book and, the core premise, what you would want someone to know as they think about the book and how they can use that as a resource and tool to help them lead a more healthy and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. So Built from Broken is my book on healing painful joints and rebuilding your body pain-free. And the core premise is that you can use all those injuries, those setbacks, not just to help you get back to where you were, but actually become a stronger human being. And not just mentally. The resilience that I see in people who've overcome these obstacles, it's amazing. And that's become the core of our mission. We've realized we're helping people build true resilience. But even beyond that, once you learn how connective tissue turnover works and what true science-backed mobility is, people are blown away by what they can do when they start addressing these problems, not just getting out of pain. I would say your standards are too low. If you're just trying to get out of pain, you can do a lot more than you think you're capable of if you have the right system. And that's what I've tried to do with this book, is build a complete roadmap. Like, it's a slog if you read it cover to cover, but it's worth it. Even if you don't, use it as a reference. The back of the book will guide you through shoulder pain or whatever it is. But this is a system to get you, if you're not happy with your level of pain and function in life, to get you from where you are to being able to do basically anything you want with your body within reason. So that's the main goal, is to be able to move pain-free without limits.
I love that. Well, thank you for bringing that to the world and to making it approachable and digestible and something that someone can embrace as a system, because that's what we do. If we can just deploy a system, we don't have to create it all from scratch. You've created that for us. So thank you for doing that. Well, Scott, I am so deeply indebted to you for taking the time today. And I'm so grateful that you've written the book, that you've started your company, and that you really have a mission to enable others to live their lives in not just a pain-free manner, but in an optimized fashion. So thank you so much for your mission, because it not only impacts me, but it's going to impact everyone that you come in contact with. And I'm very, very grateful.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you, Dusty. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, before you go, if this episode helped you see leadership differently, I have 3 personal requests. First, and this is the most important one, share this with one leader who needs it. Think of someone in your network who's frustrated with their team's execution or is trying to scale their own impact. Copy this episode link right now and text them, "Hey, I just listened to this episode and I think you'll get real value from it." That simple act of sharing, that is servant leadership in action. Second, subscribe to Leadership Unlocked. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast player, just hit subscribe or the follow button. That way you won't miss the next episode, and it helps us reach more leaders like you. And third, if you're willing, this would be a huge help for us. Leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. I know it takes 60 seconds of your time, but here's what it does. It helps other leaders discover the show. Every rating, every review, it's how we expand our impact together. So those 3 things: share with a friend, subscribe, leave a review. I'm deeply appreciative, and that would give us so much help. Thanks for being part of the Leadership Unlocked community. Now go create some clarity for others.